This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. We have a multitude of insurance needs, and we need somebody to manage all those needs and do everything they can to save us money. That is Purdy Insurance. Customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. Joined now by the outstanding Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome.
As always, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so Steelers, Ravens, take 3, Steelers down the stretch. Somebody said to me, well, they backed in. Nobody backs into the playoffs. You play all these months, you've got the better record, you're in. It doesn't mean you played your best football at the end, but you're in. But they've got a lot of issues. And let's start with the Pickens part of it. I mean, I'm watching Saturday night. Neal, I mean, you can get emotional and upset and mad at everybody else and scream, get me the ball. When they get you the ball, you better catch it.
To put it mildly, yeah. What I saw was a guy that can't focus on what he's doing, carried with him the last drop into the next 2 drops, and inexplicably ran inside toward the numbers on a deep play with no timeout under a minute to go. If Pickens, the defensive back gave him the game. He really did. It was a catastrophic mistake by the Bengals defensive player, whoever that was. Pickens is able to stack him, which means get on top of him, right, and you don't have anybody in front of you in either direction. Anybody would know that ball is going to the sideline. It's not going to the middle of the field. Pickens is drifting to the middle of the field, and he stops his momentum leaning toward the middle of the field, and the ball goes over his head. It's bizarre to me because one thing I will give George Pickens, and I've been saying this since they drafted him, I don't know if there's anybody in the NFL better at tracking the ball in the air than him. I mean, he's got an elite level skill when it comes to that. He completely lost it on that play. It's hard to imagine the drops, what happened leading into the game. During the game, as we would find out later, there are clips of him arguing with fans on the sideline. It's hard to imagine that those things were not going on in his head as he was going down the field, and what could have been the ultimate redemption arc for that game. Because he catches that, he gets out of bounds. They've got plenty of time for a long Boswell field goal, and I'm not going to guarantee that, but Boswell's pretty good. He's been hitting a few, and that's what the team needed him to do at that point. He still can't do it. And to me, it was almost worse than the lack of desire to get down the field and carry a safety to open up the middle of the field on the interception against the Chiefs. And this stuff is happening every single game. I'm taking on the same tone, Steve, that I talked to you last year about Deontay Johnson. It's mind-boggling how individually selfish a player can be amid massive amounts of criticism. He's just going to keep doing it, and to a point where they don't have anybody else that they can count on, but they can't count on him either. And that's a problem, and we're seeing it in the last 4 weeks. The Steelers are objectively one of the worst teams in the NFL, not the playoff field, the NFL. And they've got a real problem. They went from a 2-game lead on the division to traveling to the hottest team in football for another huge underdog first-round playoff game. And, I don't think you need to ask me what my thought is on this game. I don't like their chances all that much. And at some point, something's going to have to happen. Pickens isn't the only issue, but they needed him to step up and be a mature leader on this team this year. And to put it mildly, he failed to do that.
Look, and again, I don't want to pick on him because, again, the Steelers' first-round pick didn't play any downs this year. and they were counting on him to play a lot of downs. How difficult is it for Dan Moore, especially in protection right now? And what does that do to the Steelers' offense because he might not be consistent enough?
Yeah, it's interesting because Dan Moore was playing pretty well the first half of the season.
Yes,
I'm not going to call him the next Jonathan Ogden or anything, but he played well. It was the best football of his career, bar none. I don't know what has happened to him, but yeah, he's fallen apart, and he's a liability at this point. To suggest that he might be the worst tackle on the team says a lot, considering who's on the other side and the struggles that Broderick Jones has had. But the line is collapsing from the outside in now, and that's tough to handle because you've got a rookie center and a rookie right guard, and now the rookie right guard has a broken hand. So you're going into this game against a very aggressive defense that knows the vulnerability of the offensive line, coupled with the lack of a legitimate passing attack. They're going to attack A and B gap, land, air, and C the entire game. And I don't know if the Steelers offense is going to be able to handle that, and you're going to see a lot of what happened the last time they played. Eventually, they just broke down. Russell Wilson made some pretty big mistakes, particularly in the second half, and the Ravens won walking away. A game that could have been competitive. They were competitive within that game early on. They got some early turnovers. They had a chance to compete down the stretch, but the good teams are the ones that can kind of jack it up a notch in the second half, and the Steelers really just kind of wilted away from that. A large part of that is, I don't want to pin it all on Dan Moore, but collectively the offensive line is not able to handle the pressure over the course of a game anymore. Right. They were early on, and that's when they scored points. Now they're not, and everyone's going to want to blame, in some order, Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson, and George Pickens, but the reality is the offensive line is just simply not as effective as it was early on in the season, and that's kind of coming to bear right now for whatever future they might have this season.
I know we're talking about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and so forth. What does the absence of Flowers mean to Baltimore and potentially mean to this game as to how you scheme it up?
It's funny that you ask that, because Zay Flowers, in 2 seasons with the team, might be the best receiver they've ever had. and right. I'm not even saying that he's a phenomenal receiver. He's good. He's dangerous. He gives them big play ability on high percentage throws, which is exactly why they drafted him. He works underneath very well. He's dangerous after the catch, and he can surprise you and get deep down the field. If they are without him, I think the offense loses a step, but what it's going to force them to do is just play the game the way that they typically want to play it, which is handling what happens after the snap in an option fashion. Let Lamar decide what he's going to do with the ball based on what the defense is giving him. To not have Flowers in there, I think it definitely limits their big play ability. But I see Derrick Henry cracking off big plays all the time. I think they can flip the field with their run game, and certainly Jackson, if he gets loose, he's able to make chunk plays down the field, and they know that. So you're still needing to, defend with 11 every player on the field, and it's still a very difficult task. But they're not going to be as explosive, I think, and maybe that keeps a team like the Steelers in the game longer than they would without the big knockout punch ability. I don't know if the Steelers wanted to take a player off the field for the Ravens, I don't think it would be Zay Flowers. Put it that way. Right. He's a good player, definitely a difference maker, but they're still going to be able to function at a pretty high level without him. It's a matter of how you can defend Jackson, how you can keep him in the pocket and try to make plays on the ball in the air.
No question about that. That's a big part of it. The NFL doesn't need to do anything. I'm going to preface it by saying they don't need to do anything. They're the NFL. I mean, Sunday night, the Golden Globe Awards went up head-to-head with the Vikings and the Lions. The Vikings and Lions buried that group. I mean, I don't have to look at the ratings. They buried them. But how much would it help the league competitively if a 7 were to somehow knock off a 2 here in one of these rounds? Because 7-2s have not been competitive.
That's a good question. I don't know, because you don't want to take the twos that they have this year. I think are pretty story laden team. It's a ravenous market, kind of that villain role in Philadelphia. Whether it's fair or not, their fans create it for them. People watch them. You want to know what's going on there. They're a fun, enjoyable team to watch. Superstar laden. On the other side, I think it's kind of America's new team, Buffalo. People want to see Buffalo win for the sake of the fans. Josh Allen's very likable. He's very fun to watch. I don't think the NFL would want to see either of those teams lose. And at the same time, though, I think the overarching point is exactly what you're saying. The gap between those two seems to be significant come playoff time, because the twos don't just win every time. They rout whoever it is that they play. And that's without a bye week. It's a home game. It's not like they win every home game they play by 40 points. They're the second seed. They're not even the top seed in the conference. I think it goes to show that the parity of the NFL, it can go to 12 teams. You push it beyond that, though, you start to get into murky waters come playoff time. The real playoff contenders, maybe this is the way to put it, two teams that you have right now are not Johnny-come-lately teams. They've been there. Nick Sirianni's been in the fire. Those players have had deep playoff experience before. A bit of a letdown last year, whatever it is that happened to them the second half of the year. The Eagles have overcome that. But they've been there. They know how to do this. And with that, there's extra preparation. There's other things that they'll do that they'll save for playoff time. Probably whoever it is that clinched the 7th seed it had to exert everything they had just to get into that spot, so they don't really have anything left. Factor in, obviously, the home field advantage, but I don't think that the 7th seed has as much as the 2 seed does at that time of the year. So the idea of them scoring an upset seems pretty drastic. Anything can happen any given Sunday and all that, but I don't think this is the year for that, because I think you've got probably 3 very strong teams in each conference, seeded 1 through 3. And so, there might be an upset or 2 here and there, but it's a pretty good bet that you're going to have the top 3 seeds in the divisional round. Just my take on it. I don't know if the NFL would love to have more games, but the wild card games have been kind of up and down. You've had some crazy comebacks in the last couple of years, but it's not typically coming from the 7th seed. The 7th seed's getting boat raced in whoever they're playing, wherever they're playing it.
The college football playoff is going on right now, and I've been asked many times if there's any adjustment I would make to it. And I said I would not give the 4 conference champions, the top 4 ranked conference champions, the top 4 seeds. I'd give them automatic entry into the tournament, but I would still seed them 1 through 12. Well, the Minnesota Vikings won 14 games this year, and they're a 5 seed in all of this. Why won't the NFL change that part where, yes, you won the NFC West and you're in, but you're playing at Minnesota. You're not playing in Los Angeles.
I think part of it's a chain reaction of things. You need to put the value of the conference ahead of other games. The reason they do that, they realign the league to have equal amounts of teams in each division. Not too many, but the right amount, so that becomes, you have 3 rivals. Those are 6 big games for your team. That's a large chunk of the schedule. Those games have to mean more. I think that the intensity of, your typical NFL fan, your Joe Sweatsock wants to see wins over the divisional opponents. There's something there for that. There's something about playing for something, even if it's not going to be a Super Bowl. You had the division championship. You have bragging rights over the other teams who were there. With that, there's got to be some type of reward beyond that. And a first round, at least a first round home game in the playoffs makes sense. Now, I don't know if there is a pure way to do it. And certainly I think college football is going to have 4 or 5 variations of this in the next 10 years. I won't even get into that. That's a whole other ball of wax. But as far as the NFL goes, I think you need to have divisional significance. If you don't, you're just kind of playing in a vacuum. Every game matters. We know all of that, but there's got to be something personal. There's got to be some emotional investment in it. Pittsburgh playing Tennessee is one thing. Pittsburgh playing Cleveland, Cincinnati, or Baltimore is something else. You know, fans want to get up for that. I don't think it's that big of a deal because I don't see a team like Minnesota playing as the 5th seed very often. Right. But what I do know, in fairness, is the Vikings had an opportunity to not have that happen, and, well, that didn't work out so well for them. So sometimes that's just the way it goes. That's football. It's not as if when you get situations where there are two 14-plus win teams in a division, which is not common historically, you're typically going to have a bad division champion, and that's who you're going to be playing against. The fact that the game is in Los Angeles, yes, that's you know, I think a bit of a downside to it, but I don't think it's enough to say don't let the division champion get something for being the division champion. Don't, you know, take their focus off of that. We still want them to play division opponents twice a year, but there's no point in us doing that. So basically, if you unravel the whole thing, you're playing against the whole league, and you don't get to have those rivalry games nearly as often, which my guess is the NFL kind of patterned itself off of college with the idea in mind that from a marketing standpoint, it's easier for us to sell Carolina versus Atlanta because they hate each other. You know, there's something to that, even if they're not historically great teams and they haven't been around all that long. We can build something with this. Let's try to increase the emotional investment into the product itself.
I'll ask you one more. It's about Detroit. We know how incredibly banged up they are on defense. And then against Minnesota, Aaron Glenn, with his players, dialed up a beautiful performance. So let me ask you about Detroit. What makes them special, has a chance to be special, and how much do you think last year's run helped them?
What I noticed last night watching Detroit along those lines is it seemed like the same team. And what I mean by that is they were doing – they won situationally. I think Sam Darnold missed 5 touchdown passes or something in the first half. He was just off. And a large part of that was Aaron Glenn, who, by the way, if he didn't have a head coaching job before last night, he does now. Right. Aaron Glenn dialed up a plan that was not personnel specific, but they found a way to do enough to speed Darnold up. And that's the one thing Kevin O'Connell did to make Darnold a reasonable MVP candidate this season. He slowed him down. He got him working within himself. He got him working within a structure. The Lions, all they really did was move their linebackers back. It wasn't more than that. Because of that, it felt, I wasn't there to ask O'Connell if this is what happened, but it felt like they went away from play action because of the depth of the linebackers. Didn't feel like they were going to throw them off all that much. But what they kept trying to do was throw in coverage against the linebackers, but they never moved. They sat where they were, and Darnold was like, "You're not moving. I don't know what to do." And then he gets excited, and that's when he turns into, kind of Darnold, the strong-armed circus idiot, and launches balls 10 feet over guys' heads. He did that several times, and he had open receivers, but oftentimes it was like he didn't have it on his first look. So because of that, he gets flustered. He's not sure what to do. His mechanics go out the window, and he just leans on his arm the whole time. Detroit has an ability to kind of take away the superpower of their opponent. And Aaron Glenn is a huge part of that. And that the commonality to me when I was watching the Lions versus the other times I've watched them this year is there's different guys on the field. But by and large, they have a schematic advantage, a tactical advantage just in we're going to do something that's going to take away your fastball. Can you locate any other pitch? Let's find out. And Darnold last night was not up to that challenge at all. And he kind of regressed to what we've seen Darnold be to this point in his career. But that's no easy feat either. That's what's so fun about the Lions. They're so good at that. And on top of that, they were getting beat up pretty good. The Vikings defense did a great job against them in the first half. Really, the Vikings should have been up by 2 scores going into it. Yeah. But the Lions kept doing what they do. They ran the ball well. They got explosives out of the run game, and they blew the doors off him in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was over probably at the end of the third quarter, but Detroit is just so consistent and they're so balanced. Everybody there buys into what they're doing. They're a special team. They really are. I think, if I was making a bet, to me right now, Lions-Ravens in the Super Bowl. And that's going to be a fun game to watch if that's what it ends up being. But I think, pre-playoffs, I think the Lions are one of the best regular season teams we've seen in the last several years. They're really good. They're balanced all around. They can kick well as well. Just a tough opponent to have to prepare for and play against. And Minnesota, unfortunately, picked a tough year to have a 14-win season with Detroit within that division. Not much else you can do. Tip your hat and try to figure it out. But it's just a very well-coached, very disciplined, very intelligent football team that can do a lot of different things to beat you.
The Ravens were confused when they drafted Lamar Jackson. People were confused when the Lions drafted Gibbs. Somebody knew something. Neal, you always know something. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know. Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
By Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks, lots and lots of snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies, ready to drink cocktails. High Noon, right? Jack Daniels. They have everything. Okay, Crown Royal. And not only that, the pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, my 2 personal favorites. Indeed, second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. If everybody wants to know the single reason why Notre Dame is in the college football playoff semifinal in the Orange Bowl, is because of one guy and one guy only. Tony Simeone is the play-by-play voice of Notre Dame. Just so you know, Tony, Not every season is like this. Congratulations. You have sounded fabulous all season long, and it's great to talk with you.
Steve, thanks so much. Yeah, I've been kind of spreading that message. It's starting to stick a little bit that the missing ingredient might have been my involvement with the radio broadcasts, doing the play-by-play, because suddenly Notre Dame's won their first major bowl game in over 30 years, and it just so happens to be my first year. So it's obviously been a thrill, and I've been associated with the university for a while now. But it's been really fun to see this team kind of reach their full potential here in the third year under Marcus Freeman.
Hey, let me ask you something. What's it like for a guy to come out of Pepperdine, West Coast, and to be involved with something iconic like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. When I first moved out here to South Bend, it was 2016, to be involved with the video production crew with Notre Dame Athletics. And when you just take a job like that, you kind of have an idea of what you're getting into, but you don't really know what it's like until you get on campus and you experience the game day. As you mentioned, I went to Pepperdine, so we had no football program. So I didn't really, I followed college football, obviously, but didn't have a rooting interest. And so now this is my 9th year being associated with Notre Dame. And just to see it every year, see how much it matters, see how much people care, and then to, of course, have it culminate this year in many ways. They had 2 playoff runs before this in the 14 playoff, but this one, quite frankly, feels a little bit different. It's amazing. It's really hard to put into words, and I just feel really lucky, frankly, to get a front row seat for it this season especially.
All right, so let's talk about this team. They had the Northern Illinois game, which I think shocked everybody. And I really felt that after that game, Notre Dame was in a must-win week every week. They couldn't afford a second loss. What was it about the makeup of this team that said, okay, that's it, we're not letting that happen again?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to Marcus Freeman. I'm fortunate enough to get to sit in on his weekly meetings for home games when he talks with the NBC crew. And he was pretty open throughout the year in those meetings and into the public with press conferences throughout the year. Just that they were, did not prepare the way they needed to for Northern Illinois. They maybe believed a little bit too much of the hype people were giving them after that big win at Texas A&M, and maybe they lost sight of what their overarching goal was. And from that moment forward, to your point, they played like every week could be their last if they didn't win. And they were hammering people all season long. So I think it's a testament to him. He's had a couple of losses now in his head coaching career that are head scratchers at home. They lost to Marshall in his first year in a game that they never thought they would lose, and then it happened again this year against NIU. And I've just always admired how introspective he is. Whenever I get to talk to him or he talks in front of the media, there's no really running away from those disappointments. There's full ownership, and he and his staff, I think, really made a point to look within, address any issues that may have led to that loss at home, and make sure that it was truly an aberration. And now you look back, they're 13-1. They just beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. There's only one way to view that game, and it's an aberration that they learned from, as opposed to maybe being a lingering sign of vulnerability. I think that's been totally exercised at this point, and they clearly are the dominant team that they've been every other game except for that one hiccup at home.
Okay, Riley Leonard. Before we get to Riley Leonard, people have talked about the transfers, and Notre Dame has been now more open to transfers. How important, though, was the last offseason for Marcus Freeman and his staff to retain key players, a Xavier Watts, among others, that they were able to retain the foundation and then add in a couple of transfers?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Xavier Watts, in my opinion, obviously I see him every week, but he's not the best safety in the country, certainly one of them. To keep him, he's a guy that could have gone to the NFL. That's huge. Riley Mills, who's out for this game, and the rest of the playoffs, got injured in the opening round against Indiana. He's a guy that easily could have gone to the NFL, a captain on the defensive line that came back. Howard Cross, who will be available despite being kind of banged up late in the year. He's a future pro that's on the defensive line that could have gone. Jack Kaiser, the 6th-year captain and linebacker that easily can move on to the next stage. These are all on the defensive side of the ball, guys that they brought back, and it's a huge reason why this defense is one of the best in the country. So I think you're right. They injected a ton of skill and veteran skill at that across the board on this roster, but those in particular, 4 key guys coming back that could have left, Cross, Mills, Kaiser, and Watts are a huge reason why they're here today. It's hard to imagine them making the semifinal without those 4 guys.
No question about that. When I look at Riley Leonard, Hartman came in, he was going to be the whole thing, and it turned out okay for him. Leonard comes in from Duke. What has he added that's made a difference in this offense, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's obviously the running ability that sets him apart from a lot of quarterbacks, right? In the Sugar Bowl, he ran it 14 times for 80 yards. That's just a huge weapon to have in your offensive attack. When the quarterback's an option to run, if you can ask any defensive coordinator, it's just going to make your life more difficult. So, he's their second leading rusher this year behind Jeremiah Love, who's a little banged up coming into this game. And then as the year's gone along, in the passing game, I just think he and offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock have figured out what works best for them. He missed the spring because he was coming back from injury last year. So it took him a while to just get up to speed, I think. That's why you saw the hiccup against Northern Illinois. I think, in hearing from Mike Denbrock and him throughout the year, they've gotten more comfortable as the season has gone along, and they've just figured out what play calls, what passing attack works best for them, so that as you've seen the season progress, he's now up to 67% completion rate. They're not really trying to force the ball downfield unless it's there. They're taking what's given to him. Only 6 picks. I think he deserves a ton of credit for protecting the football that way. I think he's maybe fumbled once. I don't think they lost it. I have to double check on the stats there. But as a quarterback, to have as much pressure around him, the way he's been able to run it and protect the ball, throw it better really with every passing week and not give it away, that's how he's improved throughout the year. I think the play calling, he and Mike Denbrock in unison have found a really good kind of system to work through here in the back half of the season.
All right, the 2 running backs. Penn State has a dynamic duo in Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen that are both over 1,000 yards. What's made Love and Price work so well together back there?
Yeah, I think this is going to be such a fun game, and I hope Jeremiah Love is close to full strength. I don't know where he's going to be, but I think that Penn State is the first team that Notre Dame is going to see this year that has a case that they have just as dynamic of a backfield 1-2 punch as Notre Dame does. Jadarian Price came in a couple years ago. This is his 3rd year, and he was a really exciting back. Hurt his Achilles, so he missed his first season in 2022. And then last year backed up Audric Estime, who, of course, is with the Broncos now this year in the NFL. And I think Jadarian Price is the kind of back that could easily be this team's number 1 back, if not for Jeremiah Love, who's now a sophomore and was just incredible. I'm not sure how many Penn State fans have seen the highlights, but he's got some spectacular hurdles throughout the year where he's just leaping over defensive backs in a way that, quite frankly, Notre Dame fans haven't seen from running back maybe ever. I mean, this is an athlete really unlike anything we've seen in a long time in South Bend. He set a record for consecutive touchdowns, rushing touchdowns in a game by a back at Notre Dame. He scored one in all of the first 13 games. The only game he has not scored a touchdown yet in this year was the most recent one against the Sugar Bowl, and he kind of banged up his knee. A knee he also banged up against USC at the end of the regular season. So, listen, I hope he's in a position where he can get on the field and play. There's no, he's available. There's no official word on necessarily his status or percentage. I think it's unlikely you're going to see 100% of Jeremiah Love at this point in the season just because of the wear and tear and having to leave multiple games with a lower body injury. But that said, when he and Price are going at the same time, they really are dynamic. They can both be big home run hitters, and they can also put their head down and take on contact. They look different physically, Steve, but they really do run similarly in the sense that when they hit the hole, they hit it with velocity.
Yeah, and so impressed by both of them, especially with that big offensive line. I got to ask about the lacrosse player. What is his presence meant that he has played and won a national championship, and how that can translate to the rest of the team because he's lived it while the rest of them have not?
Yeah, I think it's something Marcus Freeman has pointed out and really embraces. I think there's a lot of coaches out there that might be squirmish about their star receiver playing another sport in the spring where you obviously risk injury and certainly are not maybe getting the rest and recovery that the rest of your team is getting during that time as well. But Jordan Faison scored 22 goals. He was the 5th leading goal scorer on what's now a 2-time defending national championship lacrosse team. And Marcus Freeman looks at that as you mentioned, great experience, of course, to play and be in big games and be in locker rooms where you're having to go through trials and tribulations. But it's just a testament to his athleticism as well, and he doesn't want to limit that in any way. And really, Jordan Faison was, I think he was banged up early in the year, wasn't quite the guy we saw at the end of last year, early this year. But here in the playoffs, he's been their best receiver. He's got 11 catches, over 130 yards in the 2 games combined. He is the difference maker in the passing game, the guy that can kind of break it open over the top. And yeah, I think there's no doubt that lacrosse experience is an absolute asset for him. And if he is able to get free in this game, it just totally changes their offense to have a dynamic threat like him running free down in the secondary.
That's one thing about this grind, is that both teams, you mentioned Love, people have talked about Abdul Carter, but guys will get banged up in this thing. Riley Mills is out. Howard Cross got banged up. Love got banged up. How tough is it tests your depth, but how tough is the grind, in your opinion, now after seeing a couple of games like this?
Yeah, it's definitely kind of the new element we're all learning about in this 12-team playoff. I think about, frankly, like the NBA playoffs every year. You get there and it seems like all the stars, or a lot of stars, are always out. NFL, you see with the grind of the season. This is just a new element to it. So like you said, it tests every team's depth. And I think that what I've been most impressed by with Notre Dame is they haven't used it as an excuse. I mean, Notre Dame's probably down 4 of their top 6 or 7 defensive players going into the Georgia game. And that's the toughest opponent they've played all year. And their defense looked phenomenal. They didn't appear to really lose a beat. That's a testament to them not kind of giving in to what they easily could. And I think that the grind of this season, you're going to maybe see as the years go along in this 12-team format, you're going to have to maybe get creative with how you utilize your depth throughout the regular season. Fortunately, Notre Dame's been able to backfill some of these positions, but I do wonder if you'll see people manage snap counts differently as the years go along, because I think, right, Penn State, if they go all the way, you'll play a 17-game season. And this is a team or a sport that, in some instances, you're playing a 12-game season in years past. So there's going to have to be an adjustment made, and especially this quick turnaround. Everyone's made a big deal about Notre Dame having 7 days as opposed to 9, but it's just tough this time of year when you're playing your most physical, biggest games of the season to turn it around this quickly for game 14 going on 15. It'll be a test, and I think you're going to have to rely on your adrenaline a lot in games like this.
The giveaway takeaway thing's big. It's plus 18, 31 takeaways, 158 points off of takeaways. I mean, obviously, it's not like I don't personally know Al Golden. I still get Christmas cards from him. I'm not kidding.
Did you get one this year? You still got one this year?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That's great.
Oh, yeah. No, he's the best. I think so highly of Al. But let me ask you what his philosophy in conjunction with the talent has meant.
Yeah, I mean, Al Golden is unbelievable. You obviously know him better than I do on a personal level. But the way, he speaks about this place, he wanted to come work with Marcus Freeman. And he's been with Marcus Freeman as a DC every year he's been the head coach. And they do, especially here in years two and 3. But it's definitely started with year 1 and just really manifested itself in year 2 and year 3. They've really prioritized taking away the ball, like you said. And when they take it away, they want to go score, too. You mentioned the points off turnovers. If they're not taking it to the end zone themselves, they're setting the offense up in a great position. And he's absolutely maximized. You mentioned Xavier Watts. I think a lot of that, Al Golden's philosophy has helped him shine in the secondary. He, of course, is not going to take that credit. He's always going to defer the credit to the players on the field and the leaders like Watts and Kaiser. But there's no doubt that he's had a massive impact. His experience at all levels. Of course, he came from the Bengals after their Super Bowl run. I think that obviously goes a long way with a bunch of college-age students that are hoping to play at that level, that he can coach them in a way that'll set them up for the next stage of their career. So it's been so fun to watch what they do on the defensive side of the ball. I think it was last year they were the number 1 red zone defense. This year they're just remarkable, taking the ball away more than anybody else. When they're at their best, they're flying around and they are taking the ball away And I think they're going to need to do that, obviously, in this game against Penn State to have the impact they want to tilt the game.
And the special teams part, I think I've got 6 block kicks on this team. Young has 3 of them. The kickoff return by the Marshall transfer Harrison, which was critical in the Georgia game. What have special teams meant to the formula with which Marcus Freeman plays?
Yeah, it's my favorite part, actually, about Marcus Freeman that maybe doesn't get enough attention, but all 3 years, his special teams have been, I think, incredible. So Brian Mason was his coordinator in his first year, they were so good on special teams, it got him a job at the Indianapolis Colts. And now Marty Biaggi is in as a special teams coach. The only area they've struggled in special teams this year was field goal kicking at times, and Mitch Jeter has come on really strong here at the end of the year to at least apparently quell any of those concerns. But the fakes that they've run this season have been remarkable. I mean, you saw the one in the Georgia game where they take the special teams unit on, they run them all off legally, bring the offense on because they never touched the ball over center. It was so deceptive that you've got the Georgia coaching staff claiming it was an illegal substitution, but it wasn't because they're that dialed in on the rule book. They've run multiple fakes this year where they've brought out a former quarterback in Tyler Buckner, who transferred to Alabama, then transferred back as a wide receiver. He wears the same number as one of the holders, and so when he comes on the field, to take a snap, sometimes he's thrown out of a fake formation or run. I mean, what they've thought of on some of these fakes is just unbelievable. And Marcus Freeman has called them from inside his own 30 on 4th and 7, for instance.
Right.
So there is just no part of the game that he's unwilling to take that chance. If he thinks that they're in a position to exploit something, they'll do it. He's been aggressive on 4th down in the same way. And that's what, to me, has been so impressive watching him in year 3. I think the special teams aggressiveness, the 4th down aggressiveness, that is what has really stood out to me in his evolution as a coach. And it's just amazing to watch that in real time, see someone kind of mature into the job in a way that is just, it's unbelievable that a guy under 40 years old is doing this in his first head coaching stint at this level. It's really fun to watch.
It's going to be a terrific game. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you. And I'll see you on Thursday night over at the Orange Bowl. We'll be stuck in the corner. Enjoy it.
Can't wait to see you as well, and we'll have the binoculars ready, no doubt.
No question. Tony, absolute pleasure. You're pro's pro. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We'll see you down there.
You bet. All right, looking forward to that. That will be on, ladies and gentlemen, Thursday night. We're on beginning at 6 o'clock. That, of course, unless somebody has scheduled something else I don't know about. So, yeah. This will be a lot of fun. And you want to be in this spot. This is where you want to be. And that's what makes it great. I mean, people talk about bowl games and so forth. Bowl games are great. They're wonderful. But this is different. I mean, this is like being in the NCAA basketball tournament as opposed to being in the NIT. It's what it is. All right, this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Stock up for the Orange Bowl right now here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. All right. By the way, Catrillo's rooting for Notre Dame, So,
did he say that?
No, we all know he's. Come on. He thinks
he's that?
He thinks he's Rudy. I mean, come on. It's just to let you know, Rudy was offsides. All right, so I mean,
you're absolutely right. By the way, here's a fun story. Senior day. They were trying to figure out videos for the few seniors that they had the year that Daniel graduated, my son. So and he didn't have a whole lot of playing time, so there weren't a whole lot of highlights. They go, what are we going to do? And I said, just play Rudy. And they're looking at each other going, oh, that's a great idea. All of a sudden, you hear the music come up, you see a video from the movie and after Dan's picture, and everybody busts up laughing.
There you go.
And one of the players, he said, Dan told me later, one of his buddies that were on the team leaned over and goes, "That should have been your nickname."
Rudy.
And he was offside, by the way.
I know he's offside. No. Well aware. No. Yeah. Press box came down on Saturday.
With a boom.
Somewhat. I mean, the explosions on the bottom that then made it tip were louder than the actual landing of the box. And hey, it's great. I think that, like I said earlier, people were wondering how nostalgic I was. You know, I mean, I've spent, 48 years in that box. 48, that'd be wrong. That's not right. How about 46? And 46 years in there, one form or another, obviously mostly play-by-play. And I'm just looking forward to the next step. I'm really looking forward to what this broadcast level is going to look like. I can't wait for I look back a little in my life, but usually I look forward. How about that?
Listen, the big question is, will you have a cooler with beverages in it? That's what I got excited about when I went to Army. Like, this is our own cooler. I think I even sent you a picture of it, too.
Oh, boy.
It's the little things.
You know, they have convenience stores.
Yeah, but it's a little hard at halftime isn't long enough.